I'm not sure there's a scene in the movie that doesn't have at least a little of Ryan's improv. And some scenes are just wildly created by Ryan.
Nope. No need to even continue. Good, nope.
Especially with this movie, we have a main character where most of the movie takes place in the main character's head. But that can be a screenwriter's nightmare. Like, you don't have anyone to talk to, and he doesn't remember fully what happened. My gross naivete really helped me say, like, fine, I'll just drive to Los Angeles. I don't know anybody there, but I'll just cold call studios and say, do you need any help? I'll do whatever you want. And it worked. Hi, I'm Drew Goddard, and this is the Screenplay Breakdown.
Hello, and welcome to the Screenplayed Breakdown. Today we're joined by writer and director Drew Goddard. He is the creator of the Netflix series Daredevil, and the writer and director of The Cabin in the Woods and Bad Times at the El Royale, as well as the writer of The Martian, for which he received an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Drew joins us today to talk about his new film, Project Hail Mary, which he adapted from the book of the same name by Andy Weir. Thanks for joining us today, Drew.
I'm happy to be here.
It's, it was a great film. It was a wonder to see kind of a spiritual sequel to The Martian, but I'd love to start off with just who you are and your passion for movies. How did you get to where you are today? Was this always your joy as a kid, something you wanted to do, or how are you here now?
So I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico, which until a couple years ago I had to explain to everybody, but now everyone's seen Oppenheimer, and so that's the Oppenheimer town. So there's a scene where Killian is having a crisis of faith in that movie. That's where I had prom. Like, that's Fuller Lodge. So, like, that's where I grew up, and it still looks a lot like that town. It was a small town, sort of in the mountains of New Mexico. So I don't think I got past Arizona before I was 20, or Colorado till I was at least 18. So my view of the world was through movies. Like, that's what I had. That's all I did is watch movies and read books. And so it's not like I even thought this is a job. It's just what I love to do. It sounds weird to say, but I just, there was literally nothing else to do other than just walk around and watch movies, hang out with your friends. So it wasn't really till I got to film school or to Colorado and started studying writing and movie making that I realized I could even do this as a job. And so at every stage of my career, my gross naivete really helped me say, like, fine, I'll just drive to Los Angeles. I don't know anybody there, but I'll just cold call studios and say, do you need any help? I'll do whatever you want. Like, it was because I was young and I didn't know better, and it worked. Like, I called Paramount, said, I'll do a PA. Do you need help being a PA? They said, can you be down here in a half hour? And I'm like, sure. I got my first job working on a TV movie, and then I haven't stopped since. Like, every job led to the other jobs, and it was delightful. But sorry to answer it's a rambling answer, but to answer your question, I did know I always loved writing. I didn't know how to turn that into a job, but I knew that it's what I love to do. I love to read and write, for starters, and then the movie sort of happened organically from that.
Right. And I'm curious, I want to get onto the movie properly, but I'm curious, as a kid, was there a movie that really sparked you, or a book even, that you're like, this I get this?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I don't even know where to begin. There's some of the obvious things as a child of the 80s. The Spielberg, the Raiders of the Lost Arks, The Empire Strikes Back. I can remember, like, the first time.
Oh, that's so cool.
I was 5, just experiencing the cliffhanger. Like, kids, it's something that people can't fully understand, but, like, that was the biggest movie in the world. Yeah. It ends on a stunning cliffhanger, and we had to wait 3 years to find out the answer. Like, so I see it at 5, and I have to wait till 8, and there's nothing else to do. There's 3 channels on, so we didn't really have VCRs yet. So all I did was think about how in God's name they were going to get Han back. Like, it's just a different way of that the world was, but it was wonderful. In some ways, it was wonderful because it just forced imagination. It really did, and it's something that I've carried with me. Is that sort of like, especially today, if you don't want to be bored, you can't. This is the right era to live in, but boredom is important. Boredom's so important to creativity. So I would say the sci-fi stuff, obviously, and then and on the book side, Douglas Adams reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for the first time as like an 11-year-old, I was like, oh, this is speaking only to me. Like it did feel like, where did this bolt of lightning come from? This sort of merging of genre and comedy was something that I felt like I had seen the light at that age, and then from that point on, I was off and running.
No, that's I'm sorry you had to wait like half your life to see Return of the Jedi at that point. But Hitchhikers, I mean, that's a great. I hadn't thought of it, but a great comparison for this movie. I think. I mean, at least tonally, was that something you thought about consciously? Like, I get to kind of recreate a movie I loved as a kid, or a book as you love. I mean, it was a movie later, but.
Yeah, it's more, I think Hitchhikers taught me to be fearless. Just reading the book and going, the thing that's a joy about Douglas Adams' writing is there's intense social criticism under all that comedy, right? It's not just a comedic book. There's a lot going on. And I thought, and I just have carried that with us through my whole career of, it's okay to be dramatic and ridiculous at the same time. That's okay. It's okay to have broad comedy and heartbreak in the same space. Like I've just always been attracted to that. And if you look at my resume, the only thing they have in common is that they're hard to classify, right? They're like, I still don't quite know what genre Cabin in the Woods is, right? I don't know what genre it is. I guess it's a horror film, but it's sort of a sci-fi film and it's sort of a comedy. Like, I clearly attracted to things that are hard to define. And I'm sure that comes from things like Hitchhikers as a kid.
Yeah. And do you find that helps with storytelling? The audience doesn't know what to expect or which way the story's going to go?
I hope so. I certainly feel it. There's certainly times, like I'll tell you with Cabin, we loved the idea of starting the movie of two guys in a break room. Yeah. Like we thought that we were delighted. We kept saying it'd be so great if the audience thought they walked into the wrong movie. And that would be such a joyous feeling for us. And then we tested it the first time and they were like, the audience didn't like it. They thought they didn't like that beginning. They thought they had walked into the wrong movie. And I was like, that was our intent. So like, I get that you guys think that's a problem, but that actually to us is not a problem because that's what we wanted. Yeah. So I don't know. I do think sometimes audiences like to have their hands held, but then sometimes they like to be surprised. I like to be surprised. So at the end of the day, all I can do is just make stuff that I want to watch. And there's no better feeling for me than when I don't know where a movie is going. Like my favorite thing in cinema is when I'm sitting in a theater and I realize that I don't know what's going to happen because I do this for a living. You learn to spot the things that are going to happen. You can guess a lot, but when I'm watching something that I'm like, oh, I don't know where we're going, I feel alive in a way that I don't feel alive in any other sort of cinematic setting.
Now, something that interests me as yourself being a writer-director, and then in this project, working just as a writer, do you feel kind of any kind of ownership or, over the visual look of the film, or does that influence how you write the script, or is that something you're happy in this film, this is just what I'm doing in this one?
It took me a long time to realize that writing, being the writer and being the director are very different jobs, right? They're very different jobs. And once I really absorbed that, like I think on something like Cabin, I really thought, I'm the writer director. I need to get everyone to just do what's inside my head. That's my job. And then you start to realize that that's faulty, that we're working in collaborative arts, and the joy of movie making, that it makes us different than, say, a novel, is the collaboration, right? And so as a writer, your job is kind of singular. Like your job is the script, and then your job is to interact through the script with all the other departments, but you're responsible for that. Whereas the director, you're responsible for everyone. So it's a different skill set. And once I embraced that and understood that, I started having so much more fun at both. Because when I'm the writer, I know what the director needs. I don't feel this need to direct because and I'm lucky, to be fair, I'm lucky I've only worked with exquisite directors, right? So when you work with directors who are extraordinary, it's very easy to be like, you go ahead and take this one. And so and then when I'm the director, I weirdly, I'm much more open, and I'm not as precious about the writing because I know, like, oh no, my job is to do this. So I really enjoy jumping back and forth, and I do try when I write whatever script I write, I try very hard to think it through visually. Partially that's just how I think. Partially I think if you can do that, it will help every stage of the process. But I'm not precious about it. It's more, I tend to think of scripts as everyone's safety net, right? It's like, here's your safety net. If you don't know what to do, it's here in the script, right? If the actors are playing the scene, look, I'm usually there. If they have an idea to make it better, let's do it. Like, let's figure it out. But I also will tell you what I think is important. And if everyone doesn't know what to do, I have a roadmap for you. And that applies to the visuals. It applies to the whole structure. But then if you get that safety net, it really gives you this license to let everyone play. And I knew in this case, Chris and Phil, like, they love to play. They sort of, Chris and Phil, who directed the movie, they're just these exquisite visual artists. And so I would throw them ideas, and then they would take every idea I had and make it significantly better, So it was, and that's the joy of it. You're like, we're just bouncing stuff off each other. And I mean, truthfully, we've been working on this thing for 6 years now. So over a 6-year period, as you can imagine, there's a whole lot of ideas flowing out between all of us. And it's what makes it feel so fun.
And being in that collaborative process, do you, as a writer, and this probably varies from project to project, do you attend on set through the filming, or have you done that? Would you want to?
I do. I'm a person that doesn't need to, I only want to be there anywhere if I'm helpful, like if I'm not helpful, it's fun to see. Like, I'm grateful to come and visit and hang out. But if you don't need me, like, I'm happy to not be there, because there's something calming about that too, to feel like, oh no, everything's in good hands. So I would go back and forth on this movie as needed. And then sometimes just to go hang out and see what's going on. And every movie's a little different, but Chris and Phil and I have a really good relationship. So even they were, this movie shot in London. And so even when we were this many hours away, we would still talk almost every day or week, depending on what was needed.
Right. And how much, or if there was any, improv in the script? Because I know Phil and Chris have kind of a reputation for improv and thinking outside the box in relation to the written word. So how was that on this set?
Yeah, Phil and Chris come from animation, and I think the thing about animation is you never stop working on it. You can constantly be changing things and constantly making it better. I tend to come from, like, I started in television where every 8 days we're shooting 60 pages. Yeah. And so that forces you to make decisions and say, this is what we're doing, because you don't have time, right? You just don't have time to overthink it. So those are kind of two diametrically opposed points of view, but I've known them so long and I have such respect for them that I sort of thought, oh, I need a little of this in my life. I actually need this process of being open to change. And what I said to them, and I knew, because it's really important as a screenwriter to understand your director and understand what your director needs. And I knew what they needed was to be able to play, right? So I said, I think the thing that will allow you to play and allow everyone on the production to play is if we are laser focused about getting this structure of this movie as strong as we can get before we start shooting. Let's work on keep hyper focused on the structure, because if we get the structure right and we get the scenes, is what I was talking about, and then every scene has a safety net. Right. Everyone can relax because you have a safety net, but if you want to play, you can, right? And when you add Ryan Gosling to that, who is just an extraordinary improviser, like an extraordinary improviser, I think it gave the three of them, Chris, Phil, and Ryan, this license to just go nuts. Like, there's so much in the movie. I'm not sure there's a scene in the movie that doesn't have at least a little of Ryan's improv. Like, and some scenes are just wildly created by Ryan and wildly created by Chris and Phil on the day. So it's this wonderful balance of build the structure really strong so that you can be ridiculous.
And when you say structure, are you thinking just 3 acts? Is that something you think of consciously when you sit down to write? You're like, okay, I have to hit these beats, or this character has to do the thing they don't believe.
It's a little, yeah, but it's complicated because it's both. I do like to think in acts, not that I'm sort of rigid about it, but I'd like mostly just to think of beginning, middle, and end and understand how many pages I have for those things, right? I like to think like, oh, I have roughly 30 pages for the beginning. I have roughly 60 pages for the middle. I have roughly 30 pages for the end. It helps me because then, especially when you're doing an adaptation where you have to make really significant changes, because like any adaptation with the book, you can really only keep about 5% just in terms of word count. Like, so you really have to be brutal about it. So it helps me to go like, all right, if we can pick what we think, like I'll give you an example of just really broad signposts for Hail Mary. We knew end of act, like what felt like the end of act 1 to me is you show up across the galaxy and Rocky's there, right? That's just when you go, oh, that is an excellent act 1, right? Okay, I know that so I know I have probably 30 and it ballooned a bit to 40 pages. I have 40 pages to get to Rocky. And it just helps me to go, okay, that's all I get. Because we could keep cramming stuff into act 1, but it's going to cost us later. So I try to do that with, and then that's a big picture, but then you get really granular. Like the other part of structure that I'm talking about is what is the character's arcs? And that is the thing that you really spend a ton of time on. So you know, especially with this movie where we have a main character who most of the book takes place in the main character's head, right? From his point of view. And he doesn't remember fully what happened and what is happening to. He doesn't understand. That can be a screenwriter's nightmare, right? Because you don't have anyone to talk to and you don't know what's going on, right? So the only way that works is if you go through it scene by scene and say, here is what he is experiencing right now. Here's what he knows right now. Here's how we're going to convey that to the audience. So that's the structure within the scenes. Like, this is what we need to say so that Ryan can go, okay, what's the emotion I need to be conveying here? All right. And then Ryan will give you 30 different ways to convey that emotion. But the structure part of it is, this is the emotion that we need to convey here. And so that's the part I sort of focused hyper on in the early drafts, right? So let's get the skeleton as strong as we possibly can. And then sometimes it's a joke structure. I mean, there's a part in the movie, it's in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling where I thought it would be delightful if when they're choosing Rocky's voice on the computer that they try a whole bunch of different voices. Well, I give you a structure of that's a joke structure. There's a setup. I'm going to figure this out. Here's some ideas for different voices that I, Drew, think are funny. I know that if I hand that to Chris and Phil, they're going to go insane. They're going to come back with a 60-minute long take, right? And Ryan is going to come back with so much. And that's the fun of collaboration because like I'm giving you, it's like I give you a toy box and now you guys go crazy. And boy, there's nobody better at going crazy than Chris and Phil.
No, I was really hoping for the Scottish one. When it landed, I was like, please be the next hour. And but
I know.
I like the one that you guys landed on. No.
I think in the parentheticals on that voice, I wrote aggressively Scottish, just to make it clear that it wasn't just Scottish. It was aggressively Scottish.
And then on the kind of the more granular side of the structures that you were talking about, I know there's plenty of books, Save the Cat, things like that, or in writing, they have like The Lie They Believe, things like these little, do you ever actually jot things down kind of like that to clear it in your head? Or is it really just kind of the basic, like 3 acts and I got 40 pages and I'll just, you feel out the rest?
It is a lot of feel at this point, but I don't discount any of that stuff. I think any of that stuff is helpful. I do sort of believe that you never stop learning as a writer, and it's fun to learn things and to try different techniques. I support all of that. You kind of have to find what works for you. What works for me is every 15 pages, I want something super interesting to happen. Now, super interesting is a very wide umbrella depending on the genre of what I'm talking about. But when I look at my board, I sort of divvy it up into 15-page chunks and go at each of these pivot points. I really want the story to do something that I don't expect. And that's been true. Like I can look at almost every one of my movies and point out like, this is what happened on page 15. That's what happened on page 45. That's what happened on page 60. and some of it's small, like it's not always this giant event, but it usually is, characters turning on each other, something that makes the audience go, wait, I was not expecting that to happen. Right. That's my sweet spot. That's what I love is finding that. So that's usually the structure I hold to, mostly because I like, it just helps me organize it. It really does. Because otherwise every movie would be 400 pages long, and we can't have that.
No, I mean, there's an opportunity here for Goddard's law. I mean, if that's something you want to put in the out into the internet for screenwriting advice, there. So I don't think I've heard it yet.
Yeah, I think that's right. Just every 15 pages, do something that delights you.
As long as every page, if possible, but 15 at the very least.
Yeah, you really want. Yes, without question, you want every scene to be good. Don't get me wrong, but if you're structuring, I want to see some escalation. I really want to see some escalation, roughly every 15 pages.
And speaking of every scene, looking back on, I don't even know how many scripts, including television, you probably have written at this point, but is there a scene or something you've written that you're particularly proud of, that you cracked a problem and you just look back and you're like, dang, I actually did good work that day?
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to think about. I'm sure the truth is I'd have to look further back, right? Because I'm still in a mode of, like, even Hail Mary, we just finished it 3 weeks ago. Like we were still messing about, mucking about with it. And so I'm still in the mode of, okay, how do we make this better? How do we make this better? How do we make this better? And then at a certain point, it's pencils down, and then it takes time, and then you get away with it. I would say some of my best writing is in Bad Times at the El Royale, for sure. And I think the answer, because this one took probably 6 months. I always had this idea, right, that the other way I work is I kind of find emotional moments, and I connect the emotional moments. That's I'll just put things on the board. Bad Times is a great example. The basic concept of a bunch of people are checking into a hotel and none of them are who they say they are, right? It's a very pulpy sort of, I was inspired by things like Key Largo. And was like, I remember, I was like, oh, Key Largo is just a wonderful concept. Bogart's in a hotel in a hurricane. I was like, oh, I want to try something like that. And so I started with the characters, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have a man who's a priest, who's not really a priest, and I'm going to have a woman who is very, you don't know who she is because she's actually who she says she is. You think she's somebody that she's not, but she's who she says she is, which is a failed singer. And I sort of knew these were two of my main characters, and I loved the idea of her having to sing while he digs up something in a room. Like, so that was on the board for the longest time, right? And I had this moment where he had drugged her or tried to drug her. And then later she woke up and he needed her because I knew I needed to get to that scene. And every time I tried to write that scene after he had drugged her, I was like, she would never be on board. She would never, ever be on board with this after he drugged her. It was so hard to write because she's never going to help him. And so in the movie, he pours drugs in her drink, and she's ahead of him. She turns around, and he turns around, and she hits him in the face with the bottle, and it opened the whole movie up, right? So from a writing point of view, it was a case of the characters will not do what I, the writer, want them to do. So what would the characters do? Oh, she'd be ahead of it. She would have figured this out. She would have figured this out 15 pages ago. So let me go back to that point in the story 15 pages ago and actually do what she would have done and see where that takes us. And that was a huge lesson for me of, like, at a certain point, you have to trust your characters. And even if that's going to blow up your story, even if it's going to unravel the whole thing you're doing, listen to what they want to do. That to me is always what I find super interesting when the character, well, I've heard a lot of people talk about the character kind of just walks off the page and you just kind of have to scramble, like typing fast enough to catch them. Yes. Oh, I like that. That's great. That's right.
Thank you. But that's interesting to me because it seems what you're, at least as I understand it, you have these emotional moments that kind of come to you. and you feel something, and then you think, okay, how do I string them together? And in your original projects, at least, how do I string them together to make sense, for it to be entertaining, hit those 15 pages? When it's, not pre-written, but when it's an adaptation, there's obviously less room for those original moments to come up because you're adapting source material. How does that differ for you, or what is, are you looking to kind of create something new out of it, or where are those emotional moments? Are they coming in at all?
Yeah, no, they're definitely coming in, and it's actually how I structure, because you still have to structure an adaptation, right? Like, because of the reasons, like I'm going to have to cut 95% of your novel, and so I've learned there's a couple of things. I've learned don't say yes unless I love it, because I'm an emotional reader. I'm an emotional viewer. That's what I connect to, quite honestly. So usually if I love it, there's emotion in the soul of the work, right? And so then my job becomes, how do I take the emotion that I'm feeling when I read it and get that on the screen? And so with something like Hail Mary is really a good example, because I think people read Andy's work and the first thing they notice is the hard science of it, because he's such a beautiful, detailed researcher. Like, it's just, he is so light years ahead of me in terms of his intellect when it comes to that stuff. And he's very good at plot. Two things that really help screenwriting, right?
Yeah.
I think what they miss is the soul. There is this beautiful humanist soul in his writing. And it's what I respond to, because the truth is, if Hail Mary was just a story about a disaster scenario and we have to fly into, the sun was dimming and we had to fly into, if it was just another version of something like Armageddon, I don't know that I would be interested in it. Yeah. I don't know that I would want to devote 6 years of my life to it. I would just it's like, I need to feel that we're speaking to something deeper, and I don't always know what that is. I just trust that if I'm feeling it, then I will put it on the page. So I start with Hail Mary. I just put on the board, much like doing an original. It's the same process. I put the emotional moments that for me really resonate of the book. It can be something like, let me try to think of something on Hail Mary that's not super spoilery. Grace and Rocky communicating for the first time, that's emotional because you have a main character who's been alone. He's been isolated for a long time, and he's finally finds someone to talk to. That's emotional. So I put that on the board and go, that needs to be in the movie. And that needs to be an emotional part of the arc, right? Yeah. Let's make sure we define that. And you just start putting it on the board, and the shape starts to follow from there, rather than me just say, let's put the plot on the board. I tend to not do it that way. I tend to put the emotion on the board first, and then the plot sort of lays in to be helpful.
That's an interesting way to do adaptation. I've never heard it described, because I generally have heard it described in the plot terms. This everything that happens, all right, get rid of the boring stuff and weed whack it out. But to go just straight for the heart and then kind of recreate it like it was your own original idea towards.
I don't know any other way to do it. And that's where it's really important to love what it is, because if I didn't love it, I would start doing real damage to the source material, right? Yeah. Like, if I didn't love it, it would become my own thing, and I don't want that either, right? I don't want that. I need to start from a place of love, because I trust that in doing that, I will protect it. I don't have to think about protecting it because I love it. And so whatever I'm doing, it will come through. And that's where I think the trust that Andy and I have for one another, it really comes through, because he knows I am going to make some hard changes, but I'm going to be protecting him.
Yeah, no. And I guess for you, what was that emotional core? Friendship?
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is I don't always know till, like, you're going to ask me 5 years from now, and I'll probably have a different answer, because I suspect that he sent me the book on April 1st, 2020. So we had been shut down for the pandemic 2 weeks. We'd been shut down for 2 weeks, but it was roughly the 2 weeks where it really felt like the world was falling.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think so I'm reading the book in that environment. Andy would say he's not writing about anything that's happening. He just wants to tell a good story. Yeah. But I'm reading the book in that environment, right? I'm reading and experiencing that book in the world. And I think I was probably searching for the themes of the story. I'm searching for compassion. I'm searching for empathy. Like, what I saw very quickly was, this is a story about man and an alien who are on opposite sides of the galaxy, and they can't speak to each other, right? They can't. The alien isn't like E.T., right, where he's got a big expressive face and vaguely humanoid features. It's a rock crab. He speaks in whale sounds. He can't exist in the same atmosphere. He doesn't like. This is going to be impossible to communicate, and so we have to figure out, oh, how do we do that? Oh, that's the point. That's actually the point of the movie. This isn't a hardship for a screenwriter. This is the soul of the movie. Yeah. So once you sort of realize that, that informed the structure, right? Oh, this movie is about Grace and Rocky. This movie is about two individuals coming together and being forced to empathize with one another. Like by threat of the universe dying, we are forcing empathy and compassion on these two individuals. And that's, for me, what starts. But I bet it goes deeper than that, if we're being honest. I bet, like, I know part of this was, it's about a school. It's also about a school teacher who, it's not, Ryan Gosling doesn't play the average, square-jawed hero. He's a school teacher who kind of goes up into space by circumstance. It's not what he wants to be doing. It's not his mission in life. Yeah. He's a school teacher. And my mom's a school teacher, like my mom's been teaching for 50 plus years. So there are deeper themes that speak to why I'm attracted to something of like, oh no, we need to celebrate school teachers. Like I like the big pulpy idea, but I also like that we're celebrating teachers right now. Like from my point of view, like, yes, school teachers should save the universe. Yes, I want to write about that. Even if it's ridiculous, even if this is a big, crazy sci-fi idea. If we can celebrate being in the classroom and those who are in the classroom and standing on those boards, trying to make students' lives better, that's what I want to be doing. And so it's both, right? And I bet, not to turn this into a big psychotherapy session. But,
I'm qualified. I'm actually licensed.
Oh, great. Thank God. But no, it is, it all sort of ties together in the decision to get to make, if I'm going to do it. Not because I'm super picky. It's more, I don't want to let Andy down. And I've learned I have to connect to it, or it's just going to be, it won't be as good. If I don't connect to it on some deeply personal level, it's not going to be what you're seeing. Like Hail Mary is deep personal connection to me, to Chris and Phil, to Andy, to our cast. Like all of the artists that are on this movie, and a huge credit to Chris and Phil for setting this tone. They're all pouring themselves onto the screen. Like they're just pouring themselves onto the screen. Yeah. And that's what makes this job so fun.
Oh, no. I mean, I hadn't thought too much about, whatever motivations the individual artist, yourself, Phil and Chris, would have had for it. But you can definitely feel an appropriate respect for all the people involved. And, it might be vague. You'll never know what someone's bringing into what the costume designer is picking for this shirt. But you can feel it, what you were saying. You might not be able to define what it is emotionally you like in each beat or what like the purpose of the movie is, but you at least feel something coming across.
That makes me so happy to hear, because I feel that when I watch other people's films, when you can feel, it's almost a handmade quality, right? Yeah. You can feel that on the screen. It's not an intellectual thing. It is an emotional reaction. But those are the types of movies I love. So it means a lot to hear you say that.
No, and I think it's one of the things when you watch another movie, and any movie where you watch it and it just feels a little bit still. You're like, what? Something's missing, and there's nothing wrong with the script. There's nothing wrong with the direction, but you just can't put a finger on it. You're like, something's just not here, and it's very hard to define. But it really just must be some kind of like a love for the source material or something to connect it back to.
Yes, I think that's it.
And then I guess, sorry, that just kind of got into that. I wasn't expecting the actual backstory to be there in that. So I'm kind of curious about the process of writing a heavily science fiction movie. And as you mentioned, Andy Weir's, years-long research working with actual scientists. Did you have to actually get a small degree yourself, or is there any kind of research you were doing on your own to even just understand and be able to accurately portray what Andy was writing?
It was more so I felt the need to really immerse myself in The Martian, because The Martian, the characters were all highly competent people, right? There was a level, so so I would spend a lot of time at JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab here in Pasadena,
Gotcha.
and just sort of learn the nuts and bolts of what I was talking about. Hail Mary's a little different in the sense that the main character isn't. And so weirdly, I actually wanted to keep that feeling of being an outsider, which I am, because I don't understand half the stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was great because Andy is the best resource, right? So if I got in trouble and I was like, I really actually have to describe this for production, they learned to just skip me and go straight to Andy because it's like, I'm just going to ask him. So you may as well just go straight to him. So it was more organic. And I think I had absorbed a lot about space just from working on The Martian and also just because I like thinking about it. But I am by no means an expert. There was so many times where I would write something and Andy would go, this isn't even possible. What are you doing here? And I'd be like, oh, thank God for you. So yeah, it wasn't as intense research-wise because part of that's because Andy and I just have a good relationship now, and I'm not embarrassed. He now knows I'm dumber than he is, so I'm not as embarrassed to ask because it's like we're very clear about who we are in this dynamic.
No, that interests me a lot because I hadn't been aware that Andy was consulting in any way on the movie, or that I personally think when it's an adaptation, I mean, generally it's, I don't know, like Wuthering Heights. You're not really going to ask Emily Bronte that much. Was there actual collaboration during your own writing process? You're sending him pages back?
Yeah, we've got it. We've got a good relationship, and it's kind of the relationship because I've done a few adaptations, and I don't want to do an adaptation with the artist that the artist is going to not be happy with. Like, what's the point? Yeah. I can do other things. I'm not here to make an artist sad. I'm here to celebrate the artist. That's what I put on earth to do. Mm-hmm. So, it starts from a place of trying to be really honest, but it goes back to what we were talking about. At first I have to love it. Yeah. Because then I can be honest with the writer and say, I love it. And then I'll talk about the problem. So we usually have a big picture conversation about what I think are going to be the challenges, and every work's a little different. Then I say, the best thing I can do, if you're okay with these big picture thoughts, now let me go write a first draft, and you're not going to hear from me. I'm going to go struggle with this. I'm going to go down a whole bunch of wrong turns. I'm going to make a whole bunch of mistakes. You don't need to hear it because it's just going to upset you, as I struggle with this. Yeah. And then when I'm done, I'm going to show it to you, and anything you don't like, we're going to talk about and we're going to fix. We're not going to put anything on the screen that you're not happy with. But I think for the first draft, because the first draft is the one where you really, you don't want to see how the sausage is made. Oh, yeah. Because I will, your job as a screenwriter is to sort of try things and make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And that's the sort of thing that can make an author pull his hair out, when you're seeing that. And I think, but I'm like, but the trick is trust that if you don't like it, we're going to fix it, right. And that's what we do. And so that's what we did on The Martian. That's what we did on this. Because it's not just me and Andy weighing in. It's also Chris and Phil, right? Chris and Phil are writers. They're wonderful writers. They helped with the script. Ryan has wonderful thoughts. Ryan was a producer on this. Right. He had wonderful script thoughts. And so you're trying to absorb everyone's point of view, but then go off into your cave and do something so that you can come back with it and keep going. It's a process. Yeah. And I don't know if this is something you can talk about but that first draft, those kind of wrong turns you make, is there anything you can share about? I'm curious, you trying to write screenplays, you write something and you're like, wow, that was a mess, and you don't know until you're way down the line. Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges we had with this movie, and there was a bunch of challenges from a screenwriting point of view, but the toughest one is this movie starts with Ryan Gosling's character, Ryland Grace, waking up on a spaceship and not knowing why he's there and not having anyone to talk to. Mm-hmm. And that, what I just described, is now act one of your movie, right? Yeah. So that is a long time to not talk to anyone and to be able to explain to an audience and keep that emotionally interesting and emotionally riveting. Mm-hmm. I think the first draft I had the device of recording video logs to talk through what's going on.
Yeah.
And the ship was demanding them. It wasn't arbitrary. The ship was saying, and so he was thinking he could talk to someone and figuring it out. But it was a very quick shorthand to get into it.
Yeah.
Ryan called me on it. He said, I don't want to do this. I feel like this feels wrong. I don't feel like my character would do this in this situation. Like on a soulful level, like and he was right. Like I thought what I inherently was not doing that in the screenplay because I thought it's going to be really hard to do what he's describing, right? Which is to find these things visually through action that we could do. And so I was scared of that, and that's why I wrote it the other way. But I'm so grateful that he called me on it, and then we did it, and we found it. And you'll see in the movie there's a pivot point where the ship asks for a video log. He's like, no.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't record till later. And there's an emotional reason why he starts recording, which is he's now met Rocky. Mm-hmm. And now he actually has a reason to record something, right? Which is, I have made first contact with an alien. I actually need to tell the world. I don't need to tell the world about me, but I do need to tell the world about this alien that I've just met. And so there was a character reason to do it rather than a screenwriter reason to do it. I would say that's the best example of something that I look back and go, oh, thank God Ryan called me on it.
No, I think it was an incredibly interesting choice because the first 10 minutes, kind of what you were saying about surprising the audience, you're thinking, how long is this going to go on? I mean, it's not looking great on the spaceship, other character wise. So where's this going to go? And you start asking those questions yourself. And then you find you're 15 minutes in, you're like, wow, I've just been thinking all in all about where this movie's going to go. And it does capture you more by being more difficult to convey to the audience what he's thinking, but it makes you work for it, makes you engaged in it rather than doing the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. It was not easy, but it was, we were better for it.
Is that, I guess, advice you would give to anybody who is writing is kind of, do the thing you're avoiding? I think maybe better is listen to your actors, especially if they're actors who you trust. Yeah. Because they really are looking at it through a point of view that you're not always looking through. Like I'm trying to juggle what's the story element of these scenes. I'm trying to juggle what's the audience think, what's going on with the rest of the world. Whereas actors are like, I'm thinking about it through only my character's point of view. Yeah. And so they really can sort of laser focus things that you're kind of missing, Mm-hmm. So if you're lucky enough to work with really talented actors, don't take it lightly. Like they are there for a reason. Their instincts are really good. And even if that thought makes you upset and all the beautiful writing you've done, there may be something beyond it that you're missing that is really important to address. No, I mean, that's what you had mentioned earlier reminds me of, being a writer director. It's not just, this is my vision, everyone get in line. It's the kind of the beauty and the helpfulness of having collaborators to show you something you just can't imagine on your own.
It's way more fun. That's the trick, is it's way more fun when they surprise you. Like when something happens and there's nothing better than when I walk on set and the day goes an entirely different direction than I was expecting in a delightful way. Like that's my favorite feeling in doing this work.
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up soon just to let this upload before we sign off. But while we're here and for like a last final question, is there any advice you would give to yourself or someone else of a younger age if you had to go back in time and say, this is what I learned, give yourself a helping hand to avoid a mistake that a real Drew might have made?
Yes. I would say you're going to feel like you don't know what you're doing. You're going to feel like you don't belong here because you don't know how to do this and you've never done anything like this. I want you to know that feeling never goes away. The feeling literally never goes away because you've picked an art form that you never stop learning in, right? You have chosen a collaborative art form that you are constantly learning. So just trust that feeling is okay. That feeling is okay that you don't know what you're doing. That's actually part of what the art form you have picked, because it's constantly evolving. Every script is new. Every single script is new. So don't get hung up on that fear, because you're going to have that with you forever. So just accept it and start to enjoy it. Don't let that get in the way of you enjoying the learning of this, right? The learning and of each script is the most important part. And if you're constantly worried about that you don't know how to do this and you're not supposed to be here, you're not going to enjoy what you should be enjoying, which is you're making art. Mm-hmm. Like even whether it sells or not, whether it gets made or not, there's so many landmines at every stage of this process. You have to really remember that the reason you wanted to do this in the first place at its core is that you love it. You love this. You love making art. And if you hold true to that, nothing can stop you, because no matter what happens, you can always keep making art. Always.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. Thank you.
Of course. No, thank you. This has been a lovely conversation. I really appreciate this.
Oh, no, thank you. It's great to hear someone. That's great advice, because I think a lot of people, I know myself and other friends I have that are writers, stop because they feel like they have no idea what they're doing, and that's why they're bad at it. And then they stop.
Yeah. That feeling never goes away. I'm just telling you. I'm 25 years in. I feel it every day. I feel it on every movie. What gets better is you get used to it. You just understand, like, oh, this is part of the process. This is the art form we have chosen, and that's okay. And there's a flip side that's delightful, because it means it's never boring, because it's always new.